Now why'd you click on this video, huh? You read the title, you saw the thumbnail, so why did you still click? Don't think the Royal Sisters did a good enough job ruling the land? Don't trust the main six with the most powerful magical artifacts in all of Equestria? Or are you just here because you want to cause chaos, get more powerful, become an alicorn, or have any other sort of motivation that I'm sure is very, very justified? If you answered yes to any of the above, first off, yikes. But secondly, welcome! Today, I'll take you on a journey on how to become the ruler of Equestria. First, let's focus on what we want to achieve here. In the end, we want to end up with our flanks sitting on that sweet, sweet throne. But if that were our only goal, we could just go on one of those shitty castle tours they organize for tourists or something, and then just sneak out and rush to go sit on the throne. But no, we want to sit on the throne and actually have the power to rule the land. And since none of us are alicorns, and I'm pretty sure no pony plotting to take over is enrolled in Celestia's or Twilight's school, though if you are, please raise your hoof now, that'll make things significantly easier. Worth a shot. Regardless, it seems like we'll have to come up with a less than legitimate way to get to our goal. In response to that, you might ask, so then what? Do we just overthrow the princesses and take control? To which I'd say, that's actually a very real possibility, yeah. However, as exciting as that sounds, it will once again not be enough to actually rule the land. Getting rid of the princesses is going to be a challenge in and of itself, but we also need to have the power, respect, or fear to actually rule the land. If we sit on the throne, but no pony beneath us actually respects our authority as rulers, it's only a matter of time before there is a rebellion of sorts, where we're going to end up like the princesses before us. Now, without actually doing any further research into the topic, because I don't want to end up on some sort of government list, we should decide on our game plan. I want this plan to be accessible to any pony, meaning we shouldn't rely on racial abilities like flight or magic. Basically, as if any Earth pony is able to do it. Same goes for solutions that require a lot of money. Not everyone has the bits to bribe government officials, as fun and realistic as that would have been. So let's take a look at what obstacles we'll have to face on our journey to the top. If we decide to take the hostile takeover route, similar to what the Storm King did, we'll have to deal with the princesses and the main six with their pesky little elements of harmony. The royal guards are also there, but I don't think there are many scenarios where they will cause a serious problem. Maybe if we're trying to get our hooves on some powerful artifact that is being guarded somewhere in Canterlot. Regardless, I think the brute force solution should only be used as a very last resort. I'll explain why in a bit. So let's instead look for a more clever solution for getting rid of these obstacles. What was that? You want to try removing one of the main six from the equation? That seems quite reasonable actually. According to a poll I ran a couple of weeks ago, most of you think that the biggest obstacle to taking over would be the elements of harmony after all. So then let's take a look at what member of the main six would be easiest to take out. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Twilight are just too strong, period. Pinkie Pie is Pinkie Pie, no further explanation needed. And between Rarity and Fluttershy, as much as I'd love to get rid of Rarity, my bits are on Fluttershy. She's just way too easy a target with how trusting and kind she is towards every creature. However, we are once again forgetting one thing that completely invalidates this cute little plan you cooked up, which is also the reason why the brute force solution I mentioned earlier likely wouldn't work. After all, the main six, and even some of the princesses to some extent, are main characters. Straight up trying to get rid of them will trigger that trap card and activate the PG-13 show plot armor, ensuring their ultimate survival, and likely anyone involved in that attempt would be turned to stone, which we don't want either. We could try and steal the elements. After all, we would likely only have to get our hooves on one of them, as the elements need all six of them together to work. However, this would also prove to be more difficult than expected. In the show we see that the elements are usually either locked away in Canterlot or with Twilight, where they are likely protected with various magical spells after the whole Sunset Shimmer incident in the beginning of the first EQG movie. And even if not, I fear that outright stealing the elements would also be foiled by plot armor shenanigans. So, what do? What option is left? Well, let me tell you about the wonderful art of children and manipulation. We've determined that it'll be very hard, if not impossible, for us to get our hooves on the elements. So instead, let's take a look and see if we can find some creature who can. Now, who here is the smallest? And I mean physically. Just because you consider yourself to be a silly little guy doesn't actually make you small. Whoever this is, we're going to dress them up as a student and have them go hang out with kids from Twilight School under an alias. And now that I say it out loud, we should probably also run a background check on them to make sure they're not a Minecraft YouTuber, or in Twitter jail, you know? Can someone get on that, please? Thanks! Anyways, once they start hanging out with creatures at the school, they'll start to slowly bring up the elements of harmony every now and then. So once it's time for the big final projects, we want someone in the group of friends they made to pick the elements of harmony as their subject, perhaps with a little more pushing from our side. And of course, in order to properly research the elements, they'll have to study them up close. The professors there are too much of a pushover to say no to such an ambitious student anyways. And this is where we'll strike. Once they have the element of harmony with them and take it to the library or some other place without supervision from any of the main 6, we'll swoop in at some point when they're not looking and take it for ourselves, making the student believe they lost it. Then we'll have our undercover pony gaslight the student into not telling Twilight by telling them how many problems they would get into if a princess found out you lost one of their most important possessions, and instead to just keep looking everywhere for it. Of course, the news would come out eventually when Twilight wants the elements back, but by then we'll be long gone and there should be no way to trace it back to any of us. Oh, and one final thing, whatever you do, make sure you don't steal Twilight's element. It doesn't matter which of the other 5 we get our hooves on, but Twilight's crown is kinda essential for the next part of our plan. I'll explain in a bit. Alright, so that takes care of the elements of harmony. Now we just have to take a look at the princesses and the royal guard. We'd only get in trouble with the guards if we were to attempt a hostile takeover, which we already established wasn't the smartest of ideas. However, we've seen over and over again that the princesses have no such plot armor against disappearing or being kidnapped. So what do we want to do? Find some sort of powerful magical item that could take care of them? Or do we want to try a more subtle approach? While I think it would be the easiest option to get our hooves on some powerful magical item and go for the hostile takeover approach, I'm not sure there's an appropriate magical item at our disposal. We see a good amount of items with very powerful magical properties in the show, but all of those are already used throughout the seasons, like the Storm King's staff, Grogar's bell, or even the Alicorn amulet. We never definitively learn what happened to any of these objects, and I don't just want to create magical items to support my own argument, even though I'm 100% sure there could be more artifacts out there to help us with our schemes. Plus, you know, there's still a lot of open space on this pinboard, and I don't want to deal with the amount of angry comments you will all leave if I end the video now. So let's instead look for a more subtle approach. The princesses aren't going to give up their throne to just anyone, so we need to target the one pony that is destined to rule the land, Twilight Sparkle. And if we play our cards just right, I think we can create enough friction to take over the throne. And what do we need for this? Well, cupcakes and invisible ink. Now, that might not seem like a very logical combination to take over, but please bear with me, I promise it'll make sense. After a shift of power in a monarchy, there's always a period of uncertainty in the land. In this case, it'll be the question if Twilight will do a good job, will she live up to the legacy of Celestia and Luna, and how is she planning to keep every pony happy under her rule, stuff like that. We need to strike right after Twilight takes the throne, and becomes the official ruler of Equestria. This is also why we couldn't steal her element of harmony. If her crown is missing, the transfer of power would likely be postponed until it was found. We don't really have that issue with any of the other 5 elements. Right after Twilight becomes the ruler, she will likely have a long series of public appearances to quote-unquote get to know the ponies of Equestria. If we can get her to repeatedly and very publicly fuck up during these appearances, it'll definitely plant seeds into the ponies of Equestria about her competency to rule. But how do we do that? Well, we need someone to join Twilight's organization team. If we have some pony on the inside who knows when and where we can strike, it's as simple as cutting a beam of floorboard here, doing some construction next to the venue there, losing an element of harmony, stuff like that, and boom, seeds planted. This does mean we need to plan and time up multiple of our schemes very, very well. The element of harmony needs to disappear while Twilight is still in charge of the School of Friendship, but not too long before she becomes the ruler of Equestria and that event has already faded in the memory of the public. But Lumin, where do the cupcakes and invisible ink come in then? Well, very observant, good question. We will need an entrance to actually become part of Twilight's team. And who does she trust the most when it comes to planning and organizing events and parties? That's right, it's Pinkie Pie. And what pony is the easiest to be liked by, and therefore manipulate into doing your dirty work? That's right, it's also Pinkie Pie. So, we plant someone at Sugar Cube Corner, probably as an unpaid intern or something, so Mr. and Mrs. Cake have no objections. They get to know Pinkie through and through, and then slowly start mentioning how much they look up to the royal palace and how much they would love to work there in party planning, until Pinkie eventually gets the idea to recommend you for the position there. Additionally, we could deal with the current event organizer of Twilight's team. Since there were total no pony in the big picture, no one would even notice if they suddenly got food poisoning and disappeared or something. And boom, we're in! Now, for the invisible ink part, that one is slightly more symbolic for all the sabotaging I mentioned earlier. Even changing a couple of words in the speeches she will have fully memorized would still throw her off quite a lot. And because small stuff like that would go wrong all the time, Twilight's inner perfectionist would totally go crazy and, well, she would start Twilighting all over the place. Once her plan has been put into motion, one of us will step up as a charismatic and very vocal leader against Twilight's rule, doubting her every decision and throwing out the question if she really is the strong and perfect leader that Equestria needs in these times. If we keep sabotaging her public appearances and questioning her rule, other ponies are bound to join our movement. And there should be little risk in making such a public play, because if she would actively shut us down, it would just prove our point even more that she would be a dictator, getting even more ponies on our side. Eventually, her overthinking and twilighting will shine through to the ponies of Equestria, which would give us more strength and credibility to take over the throne, and have our leader, which is definitely not me, take control of Equestria. And there we have it, with me on the throne, and definitely not a whole list of crimes behind me, that is the definitive way to take over Equestria. Now, time for my tour across the land to get to know every pony. Speaking of, has any pony seen my crown around? One of us will step up as a very fucking not very